Hi guys, and welcome to episode 7 of All Bases Covered. Today you join me at East Delph Lakes in Cambridgeshire, and there are 3 lakes here, but the lake we are fishing today is the Long Lake. Now the Long Lake is available now for test fishing ahead of its official opening next year. So there is a little bit of mystery to the place. No one really knows exactly what's in here. But what I do know about it is very silty, and that is the topic I'd like to cover in this episode. Well, there are a number of contributing factors that lead to the buildup of silt. It can be quite simply dust being blown into the water from the surrounding area, or it can be bankside erosion. That's why a lot of venues that are fed by streams for such like, they can be often much more silty. When that stream floods and goes into the lake, it's carrying lots of suspended particles from the bank that it erodes, and that leads to the buildup of silt. Another factor is organic matter, shall we say, so fish poo, bird poo and the likes. But perhaps the 2 most common factors are the breakdown of vegetation and debris. So weedy waters, and also venues that are surrounded by trees. And that's the main factor on the lake that I'm fishing here today. There are lots of large willow trees around the lake. Not as many as there has been in readiness for the pool opening. Quite a lot of these trees have been felled. But all these trees, every autumn, when they are shedding their leaves and then leaves start to break down, they are a huge contributing factor to the buildup of silt. So this is why estate lakes tend to be silty venues. They are often fed by a stream carrying silt, and they are often surrounded by trees which shed their leaves and then break down. Put my water down. That was quick.
I don't think I was quick enough to get that take on.
That was super quick. Yes, we got him. Well, what a start that is. I mean, he might not be a monster, but that rod had only been in the water 1 minute. I was just having a bite to eat and a drink of water, and I hadn't even got a chance to swallow me first mouthful of food, and the rod was away. We've got a nice little mirror in the net. He's probably just under double figures, but we'll take a closer look at him now, and I'll show you the setup that I caught him on. Okay. Well, he's not going to break any records, this one, but it's a start. We've got a nice clean looking mirror of around, well, he's probably just under double figures. I think he's probably about £9 if I'm being generous. And this fish fell to a silty spot on a channel between the islands on a really simple helicopter rig. And I'm going to slip this fish back now because it is pretty warm, pretty sunny, so I'm going to slip him straight back, and then we'll take a look at the rig itself. We'll talk about rigs in more detail a little bit later on in this program. I'll just quickly show you the rig itself. The hookbait I was using was a Pacific Tuna wafter hookbait, and that's mounted on a blowback rig that's tied using a size 4 curved short hook tied to 25-pound Camatech soft. I've also got a tungsten flipper over there to improve the hooking properties. Now this is the setup that I use for the majority of my bottom bait fishing. You'll have seen me using it many times before, but the lead arrangement is a bit different to what I normally use, and it is what I prefer when fishing on silty waters. So here I'm using the Edges Camo Heli drop-off kit, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the program and show you exactly how to set that up. Now my preparation for fishing silty waters actually begins at home, and that's because one of the problems faced when fishing in silt is your baits can become tainted by the silt that it sits in, and the smellier the silt, the bigger this problem. So what I like to do at least 48 hours prior to a session is soak my boilies in a liquid. So on this session, for example, here I am using Pacific tuna boilies. These have been prepped and they are ready to go. And what I have done, I've soaked my boilies for over 48 hours in hot chorizo liquid. They actually had about probably a week soaking in the back of my van. And although these are freezer baits, because this liquid has quite a high salt content, it acts as a preservative. So you can leave them soaking indefinitely if you want to, and they won't go off. So I have them soaking in the hot chorizo liquid. So when the bait has absorbed that liquid, it then reduces the amount of water it can absorb, and therefore the amount of the smell it can absorb from the silt. So by adding a powder to the boilies, it really does add a whole new dimension of attraction, and it greatly reduces the amount that the baits can become tainted. Now, one of the best things about fishing silty waters is it can be very obvious when and where the fish are feeding. The silt tends to contain lots of trapped gases, and when the fish are grubbing around, they displace that gas, and that's when you see the fizzing, the big eruptions of bubbles coming up. And just a few moments ago, I put in a few handfuls of pellets underneath this tree down here, and within a couple of minutes there was fish fizzing like mad where they were grubbing around. And all I've done, I've just come down with one rod and a net. I've just lowered a rig right in amongst that fizzing, and hopefully we can get another carp. So I don't know. So yeah, it's just been a few minutes since I saw the fish feeding underneath this tree. You can see as this fish is fighting, it's kicking up lots of silt. It's really soft and silty underneath these big willows. Yeah. It's a little bit tight underneath these trees for landing fish. I'm just going to shorten the rod down. It's the beauty of these Explorer rods, you can fish them at either 8 feet or 10 feet in length. And when there's quite a lot of trees overhead, it makes it much easier shortening it down to its shorter length to land the fish. There he is. That's a pretty fish. Yes! Oh, that's great. I love that type of fishing, absolutely love it. And we've got a really pretty mirror in the net too. Really nice looking fish. That was great. Well, they are getting bigger, and that is a stunning low double figure mirror. And what a way to catch it too. Just lowered in a wafter hook bait onto a fizzer underneath this willow tree, and then just a few minutes later, off it rattles. And this fish has probably never been caught before, which makes it all the more sweeter too. So having now caught a couple of fish, I think now is a good time to show you the rigs I'm using in a little bit more detail. I'm going to start with the lead arrangement first. And here I'm using a helicopter setup. Now the reason I like to use a helicopter rig when fishing in silt is it allows the lead to go into the silt, and the hook link can travel up the main line and not be dragged into the silt, which will compromise presentation. So if we start at the top here, I have a tungsten tapered bead, and that is pushed over loosely onto a tungsten tapered mainline sinker. So should the mainline break, the fish isn't tethered to the lead or trailing any line, and you're fishing with a safe rig. So because I'm fishing with a naked mainline, I'm using the tapered insert that comes as part of the kit, and what that does, it protects the mainline from the pressure being exerted on it by the swivel when playing a fish. Now with these kits you can choose to peg the lead in place or put a PVA strip in instead if you're wanting to drop the leads on the take. In this lake there aren't any snags, so I don't need to lose the lead on the take, so I'm using the plug instead of the PVA strips. The lead itself for me is pretty light. It's a 2 3/4 ounce lead. Now normally for all my fishing I like to use as heavy a lead as possible, minimum 4 ounce, to aid with hooking the fish. But in this instance, because the lake bed is so soft, that lead is going to plug into the silt and offer extra resistance, so I can get away with using lighter leads than I would do ordinarily. If we come down to the rig itself, I have a simple blowback rig which is attached to a flexi ring swivel, and the rig itself is tied using 25-pound Camatech soft. Now the reason I'm using the soft over the stiff or the semi-stiff is should the hook link land over any debris, or should that lead plug in and start to drag the hook link down. Perhaps I underestimated just how soft the silt is. Because it's soft, it will lie flush with the lake bed. If you come down to the sharp end, I have a size 4 curved short hook. I have a tungsten kicker over there to improve the hooking properties. Then I have a large rig ring tied level with the barb to create a blowback effect, and the hook bait I'm using is a wafter hook bait. Now when I'm fishing in silt, I do prefer to fish bottom baits or wafter hook baits wherever possible over pop-ups. The reason for that is I think a lot of the bait that you introduce into the silt, it doesn't sit on top of it. It's not sitting on top of the silt. It can kind of come to rest and be sort of semi-submerged in the silt. And when them fish are feeding, they're not feeding and sucking from 1 or 2 inches above. They often have their noses touching the silt or even in the silt, picking up food items. And even if you fish with a short pop-up of just 1 inch, that can be just 1 inch too far. So I'd always prefer to fish a bottom bait or a balanced bait that's just going to sit flush with the silt. That way it's not going to be missed by any carp grazing in the silt itself. Well, the day is wearing on now and there's noticeably a lot more fish moving around in the open water areas. And what I want to do now is try and find a spot in that open water ahead of tonight. So all I have here, I have my spod and marker rod, and I just have a bare lead attached, no marker float, just a bare lead. And now I'm going to look for a nice silty area to fish, which shouldn't be too hard because it's all silty. But look for a nice silty area to fish in the open water. So all I've just done there, I've just cast out the bare lead into the lake, controlled the lead as it's gone in the water, slowed it down as much as possible. And it is really shallow there. I didn't get any sort of drop at all, which to me suggests it's probably 3 feet deep at its deepest in that area. So the lead has plugged in the silt there already. It is such a soft bottom that lead has plugged in. Now I want to fish an area where the lead is a little bit firmer, a little bit cleaner than anywhere else. I don't want to be fishing in real horrible rancid smelling silt stuff, soft sticky stuff. I want to try and find a nice clean area. And that lead has plugged in, but it came free pretty easy. If that was really deep silt, then it would take some force to get that lead out of the silt. And that's come through pretty easy. As I'm pulling the lead back though, it is sticking quite a lot. It's not gliding smoothly. It is sticking quite a lot. So it feels pretty clean, but it does feel like there's a bit of debris there. So initially when I pulled that lead out of the silt, it came out pretty easy. And then it slid quite freely for just a few feet. And it sort of locked up a little bit. Then it was hard work to get that lead moving again. And that's obviously why I was pulling it through all that leaf debris on the bottom. And this when it breaks down, that's what's creating the silt, exactly what we've got in here. As that breaks down, that is silt. So, and it doesn't smell great. It's not an area I'd want to place a rig, put it that way. So I want to try and find a nice, smooth, clean area with very little debris that doesn't smell like a dog's. So I just dropped the lead a bit shorter than where I have been fishing, pulled the lead back, probably half a rod length. And there's a bit of light debris there, but it doesn't smell anywhere near as bad as what was out there. It's just a few twigs, and I pulled that lead probably 6 feet. It doesn't smell bad. So that was slightly to the left and shorter than where the first couple of casts went. I'll just have another go there. Well, that's the best cast yet. When I felt that lead down, it felt a little tiny bit deeper. I actually got a bit of a drop on that one. And I pulled the lead back and it slid really smoothly, so I clipped it up and had another cast to that same place. And that's 2 casts without bringing back any sort of crap. Lead just smells normal. So I'm clipped up on the reel. I just want to have one more cast there just to make sure. Yeah, it's 3 out of 3 casts where the lead's slid really nice and easily through that silt. The tiniest bit of debris on the lake bed. So yeah, that's a nice, clean, silty area. I know I can present a bait efficiently, effectively. Doesn't smell bad. And these are the sort of spots we're looking for. The slightly firmer areas of silt, cleaner areas of silt, not ones that are full of rancid, decaying that smell really bad and are really sticky. Right, that's my spot found. Let's get some bait in. So I managed to find one nice, clean, silty area in the lake, and it's big enough to put 2 rods on. It's actually probably 12 foot wide. So I've got 2 rods on that spot, and what I've done now, I have removed the lead from the spod rod and attached a spom, and I've just introduced 5 or 6 spoms of bait onto that area. Now the bait I'm using, this is kind of typical for my silty approach. It's the boilies that we have prepped in advance, and instead of using them whole, they are mostly crumbed, broken, halved baits. These are baits that are going to sink slowly through the water and come to rest gently above that layer of silt. If I was to introduce whole boilies, then they may sort of come to rest just under that layer of the silt, or embed themselves into that layer of silt. And if you're using big baits like 18 and 20 millers, they can almost vanish in really fine silt. So we've got a nice mixture of halved, chopped and crumbed baits that are packed full of attraction and are going to remain visible to the carp. Well, so far in this program, I've told you the things that I do when I'm silt fishing, but now I want to tell you about something which I don't do, and that is using solid PVA bags. But it wasn't always this way. I remember I was doing some underwater filming with Rob Hughes on a venue which I didn't realise was quite as silty as it was, and I was fishing with solid PVA bag tactics, and I cast the solid PVA bags to a spot which I thought was very, very fine gravel. I cast a leading rod to the spot, pulled it back and felt a very, very faint tap, and I thought it must be very small gravel. So the rods were in place. Rob Hughes went and did his underwater diving, to the spot where the PVA bags had landed, and there was nothing visible, nothing. You couldn't find the PVA bags at all. What it actually turned out I was fishing over was gravel, but that fine gravel was beneath around 8-10 inches of very, very, very fine silt. It almost had the consistency of a thick gravy. So when my PVA bags had landed, they'd gone through that layer of silt onto the hard base below, and all you could see was 2 tiny craters where the bags had landed. Nothing was visible at all. So from this day on, if I think there's even a risk of there being silt in a venue, I mean, I thought I was fishing over fine gravel, but now if I think there's even a risk that I'm fishing over silt, I will not use solid PVA bags. So I've got 2 rods on a really nice spot. I'm very confident in it. It's nice, clean silt, and all around it is thick, choddy, smelly silt. So hopefully this area is being kept clean due to feeding activity. I've got a little bit of bait out there, not too much, but in the past sort of 5-10 minutes, there has been a distinct lack of feeding activity all around the lake. And I am thinking it's going to be more of a morning bite if we get one, as opposed to a nighttime bite, which is good. It means I get better sleep. But we're just going to have to wait and see what the night brings. Hopefully I'll see you early in the morning with a nice big carp. Well, I was just saying I wasn't expecting to catch anything until the morning, and 10 minutes later the rod rattles off with this. It's probably the biggest fish I've caught so far from here actually. It's a heavy fish. It's probably 13-14 pound. Real solid chunky little fish, really lively fish as well. Calm down. So yeah, that was a very welcome surprise. I'm going to slip him back because I want to get that rod back out on that same productive spot before it gets dark. Well, good morning. It's about half an hour after first light and nothing's happened through the night at all. Didn't even have a liner, to be honest. But in probably the past 5 minutes, the swim really does seem to have come to life. There's fizzes coming up all over the area and on the baited spot too. So I'm hoping there's chance for one more bite before it's time for me to call it a day. Well, we're getting towards the end of the session now, and recently that wind has really started pushing down this end of the lake, so I've had a really slow pack up. I've been hanging on and hanging on. I was so confident that fish would turn up at this end of the lake with that fresh wind pushing down here. Yeah, and I'm glad I did, because we've got a really nice looking mirror which I'm just about to net. Yes, and that is an awesome looking fish. Well, I think that's a fantastic looking carp to end this episode with. We've got a lovely scaly mirror of around 13-14 pound. And it has been quite tough going on this session actually, so I'm pretty pleased to have caught 4 carp. And hopefully you've managed to pick up a few tips and tricks to help tackle silty waters. So until next time guys, stay carpy and I'll see you all very soon. Well, before we go, it's competition time again, and all you have to do to stand a chance of winning an Edges bundle to recreate the setup I used in this episode are these very simple things. First of all, subscribe to my YouTube channel and also my Instagram page, like this video and answer the following question in the comments section below. What was the name of the liquid that I used to prep my boilies before the session? Put your answers in the comments section below and I will announce the winner on my Instagram page this time, and I'll do that shortly after this video has aired.